Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fandom Report. I'm your host, Catherine Mora, and I'm joined today by one of your guys' favorites, the lovely Trista.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming back. And audience watching, listening, I'm sure you know if you've been a viewer, listener of the podcast before, you know that when Trista's on, that means more than likely we're going to talk about Daredevil, and we have so much to talk about with Daredevil Born Again. Trista, before we get into it, if you want to just like remind people or tell new listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about like your passion for Daredevil.
So my name is Trista. You can find me on TikTok at TristaRose with two E's at the end. Um, and I'm a huge Daredevil fan. I've been talking about Daredevil on TikTok for a couple of years now. I think my first video that picked up was probably somewhere in 2021 is when I started doing TikTok consistently, and I'm still talking about Daredevil on there today. Any sort of news that we get about Born Again, I love to post about it. And I'm just a huge Marvel fan, anything Daredevil related, so I'm really excited to talk about what's in store for Born Again.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And also, Trista, obviously, you know, like whenever there's some sort of news that pops up online, like you're the first person I'm texting, like, Trista, oh my God, did you see this? And usually you have,
Yeah,
or you're texting me like, Catherine, oh my God, did you see this?
it's funny because I feel like I have a list of people that I need to instantly notify when there's any sort of Daredevil news. I'm like alerting all friends and family when there's Daredevil trending on Twitter. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, did you see the set photos? And everyone's like, what are you even talking about? I don't know.
Trista came prepared. She created a timeline of like what's been happening with like Daredevil coming back into the MCU. So back in 2021 is when we finally got like a tease about Daredevil coming back. And I think that was the last time you and I spoke, I think, was in 2022, right? Is that when Hawkeye came out, I think? Or was
Yeah,
that
I think it
2021?
was Hawkeye came out 2021. I think we probably
Right.
talked about it beginning of 2022.
Yes. Okay. Because I remember we were like, one of the last things you and I had talked about was like, if Daredevil comes back, like, would we want it to be like the same cast, but like not the same tone, or we want the same tone, but a different cast? And it kind of looks like we got, hopefully, like the best of both worlds. It seems like we're getting, because obviously we're getting the same cast, like we've seen the pictures of them on set, on location, and with the creative overhaul that happened during like the writer strikes, that they decided halfway through filming that they were going to basically reshoot everything. It seems like they want to lean into basically making this a season 4 of the existing show.
Which is like the best case scenario that could have happened. And I really didn't think that they were going to roll with that because, especially what we had heard about the show when details were first coming out before the creative overhaul, it was looking pretty grim. Like, I didn't want to be too apprehensive about it. I wanted to have hope, especially because we knew Charlie Cox and Vincent were coming back. So I was obviously excited for them to return and to see more Daredevil. But of course, there were the rumors that like Foggy and Karen weren't even going to show up, and there were recasts happening, and then there were rumors that the tone was completely different. So I was just so worried for what the show could have been, which is sort of like what we had talked about. Like, do you want the original cast back, but you risk the tone being completely different and the show not feeling like the same show? So I think somehow, miraculously, we ended up actually getting a season 4, which is crazy to think about because it felt like it never happened. But I'm so excited.
I know. Part of me thinks like Kevin Feige 100% listened to our podcast and who took was taking notes.
I feel I'm in a weird way, like, I think they were very lucky that the writer strikes were kind of a huge part of why the creative overhaul happened in the first place because that pause in production, which caused the entire team to stop, is what led Kevin Feige, I believe, to like review the show and what they had so far before they were able to continue when the strikes were over. And that's when they were like, oh, we need to, now that we have the chance to pause and think about this for a while, I think we should maybe reconsider some of the decisions we're making.
Yeah, yeah, because I remember reading the article, and I think you were the one who sent it to me actually, about how it seemed like the original, I think they got through 6 episodes, and it seemed like it was mostly just Matt being a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like I forget how many it said, like it took like 4 or 5 episodes for us to actually see him as Daredevil. And as you all know who watch and love this show, that this show is very much like so much about the balance between Matt the lawyer and Daredevil. Like it's a constant struggle for him. And so the fact that that was what we originally were going to get is like, thank God that wasn't the case anymore.
It was so surprising. I think you're right. I think it was genuinely episode 4 or 5 that he we wouldn't have even seen the Daredevil suit, which is crazy to me. And with Karen and Foggy not even being in it, like it being lawyer centric but no Nelson to Nelson and Murdoch was confusing. I was like, what are they even gonna be doing? I have no clue.
It was just bizarre because no, you're 100% right. If they're just focusing on the lawyer aspect, like where's that's part of his lawyerly life. Like those are the people who hold like Karen and Foggy are like so crucial to his humanity and so crucial to making him like Matt Murdock as opposed to like just Daredevil. And the fact that they wanted to film this and just be it's just Matt Murdock, but they don't have Karen and Foggy to help balance him out. It just it would have been bad.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. I think it being a legal drama would be I really enjoy, of course, like seeing Matt being a lawyer, and I think season 2 does a great job of that. And there's an episode in The Defenders, I think it's the first episode, where there's like a really long courtroom scene, and I think that's really cool. But it was just really surprising because people tune into Daredevil to see like Matt struggle with both parts of his life because that is so central to his character, him being a lawyer and a vigilante. And so it's just it was confusing, and I'm glad that they changed their mind.
Yeah, and it seems like because we and I remember this night, well, there was a few nights where Twitter was basically just a buzz with the pictures of Deborah and Charlie and Eldon, is that his name?
Mhm.
Yeah, where they were on location and they're it seems like they're coming out of like Nelson Murdoch and Paige, and it's like, okay, great. So we're gonna see them together. But then I was seeing the rumors that like at some point in the show, like either Foggy and or Karen are gonna like get it essentially. And I don't know I'm very nervous about this.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we talking like potential spoiler things? Can I talk about things I've seen on Twitter? I'm like,
Yeah, I think we can talk. Yeah, because at this point, like, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a spoiler. Like, the show hasn't come out yet. I think at this point, it's still technically speculation.
okay,
So yeah, I think we're fine to talk about it.
okay. Because I think the rumors are well, because Daredevil originally, when Kevin Feige announced it, I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be like 18 episodes in one,
Yeah,
and now they're gonna do. I think it's like a half season in 2 parts, so it might technically all be a season 1, but now we're 8 or 9 episodes. I think it might be 8.
yeah, that sounds about right.
And so the rumor is that like Foggy and Karen, I think, are in the first 2 episodes, and then something happens, and then they're not in it again until the last episode or the last 2. I
Okay,
think is the rumor.
that I didn't know.
I don't know if that's accurate.
That
Just stuff I've
I
on
mean,
Twitter.
I mean, it's speculation. Like that, honestly, like we won't know for sure until we actually see it. But I didn't know about the potential of them coming back in some shape or form, which is interesting to me. It makes me wonder because okay, to kind of backtrack a little bit, like who do we know is coming back? We know Foggy, Karen, Fisk, obviously. There was footage of Bullseye coming back in the suit, which is pretty cool. Which is cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, was Frank on location as well?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. So that's actually pretty good. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good list right there.
And the original actress for Vanessa is also coming back
Yes,
because
that's
she
right.
had initially been recast when they were doing
Hmm.
the initial version of Born Again, and so that's so another person will get.
Yeah. Yeah. It was honestly it was just bizarre to me. Like that recast was just so strange. It's like one thing to not bring characters back, but it's another thing to just like we're just going to keep these particular actors but like recast Vanessa. It just seemed like so out of left field for me.
Yeah, it made it honestly so much more confusing too. Like if they were gonna write out Karen and Foggy and then Vanessa was recast, if I couldn't tell if they were trying to still have it attached to Daredevil, the original show, in any sort of way. Like if that was their way of doing a soft reboot, like, oh, we're gonna like replace actors here and there or add new
Hmm.
characters here and there, or sort of like write off screen something that happens to main characters from the Netflix show. But it was definitely, I feel like now the fact that they're making sure all of the original cast is returning sort of shows their dedication to like this is sort of a season 4, or like at least the closest that we could get to an official continuation of everything that had happened in the original show. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just thinking about other projects that Charlie has shown up in. So the first one, which we were kind of crossing our fingers for, like hoping like maybe this will happen, was in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
That happened, and because I remember, um, I think that was when Kevin Feige like kind of teased it. He was like, if Daredevil ever comes back, it will be Charlie Cox. Like he'll be the one who plays Matt Murdock again. And then lo and behold, like 2 weeks later,
Which
he's
that was such crazy timing. I
yeah.
also I completely forget the context of why he was even talking about Daredevil. But this is, if I have my dates right in my timeline, this was before Fisk, like Vincent D'Onofrio, came back as Fisk. And so this was before any Daredevil characters had ever even been like seen or mentioned in the MCU. And Kevin Feige, this is because people were heavily speculating that Matt Murdock would be in No Way Home. So I guess that's like where this question came about, of someone asking like, "Do you think we would see Daredevil?" And I'm so surprised that he said this. That like, yeah, if we were to do Daredevil, Charlie Cox would be the one playing him. And he says, "Where we see that, how we see that, when we see that remains to be seen." This is a literal
Yes.
week before No Way Home comes out, which is, it's so crazy. Which it was still super unexpected because we
Mhm.
obviously didn't know for sure it was going to be something they followed through on. But yeah, I do think it's funny that this was like right before the big reveal.
Yeah, yeah. And he was there. And I remember that basically was what, and I think this was a huge help, that after that came out, there was a huge spike in viewership because Daredevil was still on Netflix at the time.
Yeah.
A huge spike in viewership of Daredevil over on Netflix that it was like basically, I think at one point it was trending #1
Mm-hmm.
on the platform. And everybody got so hyped about it. Like, oh my God, this show is so good. Oh my God, like I can't believe they brought him back. And then suddenly there was the news, like not too long after that, oh, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, all the Marvel shows are being pulled from Netflix. And you and I were like, what does this mean?
I remember I was so deeply afraid that they were just gonna disappear forever because like as a Netflix original series, I didn't really know how licensing worked with like that it could even be moved over to Disney Plus, and it wasn't super clear if they were wanting to actually associate with the original show or not, because Marvel has always been a little bit like on the fence about whether or not they want to officially canonize all those Marvel TV shows. And like, what is going to happen to Daredevil? Is Marvel actually going to claim it and it's going to come to Disney Plus as like an official MCU thing? But I remember being absolutely terrified when this was happening because, of course, it was so popular because of Spider-Man, and I couldn't believe that it was being pulled off Netflix. I didn't think that would ever happen.
No, no, and it's true. Like with the popularity, I mean, I remember you and I were theorizing like it's so popular right now, like they'd be foolish not to do something with it. But we were also thinking because again, this was like at a time where I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine wasn't coming out. Like there was no parental controls on Disney Plus yet. So we were like, how does this work? How do they make this work? Like a mature rating is like so against what Disney more or less stood for.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very much like we want to keep things, PG, maybe PG-13. We want to keep it fun and cool for the kids. So we were just like, how is this going to work? And they were like, parental controls, not a problem. And then they popped up on Disney Plus. Fisk showed up in Hawkeye. Although I remember too, like Fisk showing up in Hawkeye, that also caused like us to theorize more about whether or not Daredevil was going to be canon.
Yeah, because it definitely made me even more skeptical because he's obviously not quite the same iteration of the Fisk that we see in the Daredevil show. And being like, is this their way of like really the soft reboot? I feel like a lot of people were pretty fully convinced that that was the direction they were going to take. Like, they enjoyed the actors that worked on the original show, but they wanted to do something different with Daredevil. And so I was like, is this a completely different Fisk? I have no clue. And yeah, it's kind of crazy all of the changes that have been made. And I think I have like Charlie Cox and Vincent. They did a recent interview. Um, they were asked if they're playing the same Matt and the same Fisk um, from the Daredevil Netflix show after the creative overhaul. And they said it's not exactly the same, but much, much closer and potentially much improved. That's what Charlie says. And Vincent says, personally, I think the show is as intense as we've ever been. But it feels like they're saying that it's generally the closest that we're going to get to those original versions of the characters.
Yeah. Oh my God. That makes me really excited. That makes me really excited. Yeah. I mean, because I remember there, because again, back to Fisk and Hawkeye, like there was a lot of confusion. Like, was he, wasn't he? I think at one point you and I were also like, oh, maybe he had like maybe he lost Vanessa in the blip or something, and that just like threw him off the rails. Maybe that's why he's different now. Um, you know, all these theories. And then with before the creative overhaul, we're like, what is going on? What's happening? What do you mean it's just like a legal drama? So to hear that Kevin Feige's like really just kind of embracing, like even if it's not like a solid season four, like that the fact that they're embracing so much of the original show, so that even Charlie and Vincent are like, yeah, it's pretty close, I think is a really good sign.
Yeah, I've been really happy to see in recent interviews. They've also been super upfront and honest about what the creative overhaul was like and how it did
Yeah.
change. And they seem to be grateful for the changes and believing it's for the better. And generally, I think I feel so hopeful for the show because they both seem so much more confident and they both have just consistently, and by both I mean Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, they've been
Yeah.
talking a lot about how it's the vibes of the Netflix series and that it's going to be
Mhm.
very intense. They really like the changes that are made in the story and that it is generally supposed to be as close to the same Matt that we would have gotten in season 4 and the same Fisk. Like, they are basing it on their original versions of the characters, which makes me feel so happy and so excited.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm thinking like in contrast to Vincent's appearance in Hawkeye, like to me his appearance, his whole role in Echo really was a lot closer to Daredevil than his role in Hawkeye was. But Charlie in general, like every time he's shown up, I'm like, this feels like they literally just plucked Matt Murdock out of the Netflix show and dropped him into the MCU. Like he felt very consistent to me. I don't know if you felt the same.
I feel like, I don't know if this is controversial, I feel like
Go for it.
Hulk was the only time that I felt slightly skeptical. And it wasn't
Okay.
in a bad way. I just had some questions. Like, and I guess Daredevil is. We haven't seen what he's been doing for years. So I feel like some of my questions are going to be answered. But I was confused when he went to the suit designer and he was like kind of openly like getting a Daredevil suit and I don't know, like being more in front of being Daredevil. It just wasn't what I was expecting, I guess. Like, it felt less in the shadows vigilante-ish. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. I totally get what you're saying. Like, yeah, because it's true. Like, he's very much double life, like keeping the two things pretty separate in the Netflix show. I kind of saw it as after season three, where it's like, I'm only Daredevil. But then, he comes to accept these both sides of him, especially with the help of Foggy and Karen. Like he becomes more open in general. That's kind of how I saw it, as like an evolution of that. But I also see what you're saying in that like I don't know if I would use the word careless, but leaning more towards like careless with his secret identity. Although that could have just been the tone of the show of She-Hulk. That could have also been part of it.
I definitely don't feel angry at all. I know that there's a lot of like definitely heated discussion about She-Hulk in general, but to me, like that project did what it wanted to do with the comedy and sort of like the lighthearted vibe. Like I remember everyone was joking that they were upset seeing Matt happy because he was
Yeah.
smiling and having a good time and being funny. But
Doing the walk of shame. Can't forget about that.
I thought that was so funny. Like
Yeah.
I can definitely accept I like any changes that were made. I think they make sense for She-Hulk, and it doesn't bother me because I know that the Daredevil Born Again show is like gonna do Matt the way that we expect like to see him. And so different projects are gonna I mean the same way that Fisk was different in Hawkeye, I'm not gonna worry too much about the continuity of it. I kind of am ready to just like accept and embrace like how each project is deciding to like use the characters and show different aspects of them.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a really good way to look at it. Like, because in general, if you look at like the broader MCU, any character is somewhat different when they're stepping into a different franchise within the MCU. Like I would say like beyond the original six Avengers, most characters, if you look at them side by side in different franchises, they are not 100% consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that it's I guess it's easy for people to like fixate on the differences, and I know I'm guilty of doing that for Matt and Fisk because these other for the most part have been cameos, like their appearances in other shows. It hasn't been like a it's such a short period of them being on screen that it's really easy to like just fixate on that instead of being like they're just here. I mean, you could just also say like for Matt, like he was in California. He was like, you know what? Screw it. It's
Which
it's it's California.
and it is silly. I'm like, what is he doing over there? And like, I forget who even is the suit designer and She-Hulk that's like making custom superhero suits. Like, I'm thinking of Matt getting on the phone and being like, I need to upgrade. Like, I'm gonna fly out to California and go get a new fancy gold and red suit. Which I have no clue what the context of that is or what's going on. But like, that's what She-Hulk did because it was funny. Like, I do
Yeah.
understand that like in these shows, like the characters are just they're gonna feel different because they are different, and it's like different
Hmm.
thematically.
Yeah, it honestly it just makes me like more like not anxious, but I guess excited for the show. Just to kind of like I want to see, the characters again. I want to see like what exactly Marvel did and how they're gonna go forward. Like, is this more of a soft reboot? Is it really more just kind of like a season four? Like, are they? Because like so thinking about them bringing back Frank and Dex, it's like okay, so are we continuing the same storylines that these characters already have? Are we kind of just like quote unquote reintroducing them for like with like new storylines? It's driving me low-key insane.
I'm really hoping. The thing is, like, I say that I'm like easy and like going with the flow with these other appearances of Matt and Fisk, but when it comes to the show, I definitely do have expectations and I do have things that I want to see and I want to know. And honestly, like, I really selfishly am hoping that it's as close to a season four as it can be. Even with the question of like, is this the same bullseye? Like, are we picking up where we left off with the cliffhanger at the end of season three? And the thing is, like, I'm trying to like let myself accept that there are chances and pretty big chances that this show is going to make at least in some way some sort of changes or like maybe not answer questions in the way that I'm expecting or I don't know like differ from the original in some way. That's just how it kind of probably will work because it's also a different production team, different writers, different people on the project. But I do I just selfishly, I mean, I love the original show so much, and I don't want to hold the new show to impossible standards of like perfectly replicating the original. But selfishly, yeah, like I think I've just been wanting to know more of their story and where we do continue, especially because there was supposed to be like a season four and they had planned for it and left us with that clip. So I do hope it's the same Dex, and I hope it's the same Karen and Foggy, and that we get as many answers as we can. And yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately I'm secretly hoping this is our shot at a season four.
I think so because and we were I think we were talking about this before how for Echo, like the promo for Echo included clips from Daredevil. So how can it be like you're gonna do Daredevil Born Again and not be like, by the way, this is like you've used clips for Daredevil, Netflix's Daredevil. Like that kind of implies that it's canon at this point.
Which, and now I believe on Disney Plus, they've actually added the Defender shows like in the main MCU timeline. It's a huge green flag to me, especially because like the canon conversation has been going on for years about whether just in general the Netflix shows were ever canon, and I know that it was like somewhat of a gray area. But I don't know, like it is going to be interesting if they are making changes, even though it feels like they have basically said outright, I mean, through those promos and through like what they're doing on Disney Plus and how they're talking about the show, that the original is canon. Um, and I'm truly a believer at this point that it is. I don't know if I can accept denial of it anymore that it's not. And I really hope that it officially is.
Yeah, and I think part of like to kind of further be like, yes, it is canon, because I remember I forget the name of the showrunner, and I feel really bad. The showrunner for the Netflix Daredevil, that somebody had, I believe, tweeted at him like, hey, are you going to be involved with Daredevil Born Again? And he was like, no. And I think it was during the writer strike because he was kind of pissed off. He was basically saying like, this is something that happens a lot in the industry where at a certain point they like networks will rename slightly a television show, because so to kind of get a little technical here and like back to the writer strikes, showrunners and writers get paid more, like it varies contract to contract, but they get paid more once they hit a certain season. So in order to basically, the showrunner was implying like in order to avoid paying him and his writers like residuals for Daredevil Born Again, because if like Marvel is building off of Daredevil Netflix, like the Netflix Daredevil, like they would be getting some sort of compensation. There, he was basically implying like in order to avoid paying him and the writers like any sort of compensation, they renamed it, which is apparently like a common practice in the industry to like kind of start from zero and be like, no, it's a new project. So if Marvel is being like a little sneaky about it, which isn't great, but it also is kind of like they do want to use the original show, they just don't want to pay for it. It's great story wise for us, not so great for the writers.
I wonder if that's why they've been super like, I mean, the way they describe how the show is born again after the creative overhaul, they're sort of saying everything but officially that it's like a continuation, but they're like, it's very, very, very similar and like the same types of characters. And I wonder if that plays into it at all. But I have heard about what you're talking about. And I know that actually it happens with a lot of Disney shows. I think I saw someone brought this up on TikTok, and like lots of the kids shows will get renewed after the third season. As like, I think someone used Liv and Maddie as an example. Like they randomly moved to California or something, and then it was like Liv and Maddie, California. I don't actually know what the show was. Um, so I do know about that and that happens. And I wonder if that does play into it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially like you said, they're being like, it's super close, wink, wink, you know? So it could just be like Marvel is basically like, or Disney, I guess, because if this is like a larger problem within Disney, Disney's basically kind of like, you know, it's a reboot, wink, you know?
Yeah,
uh, it's one of those Hollywood things. I mean, like after the strikes last summer, I don't think anyone is really surprised that this is like a practice. But like I said, great for us, I guess, not so great for the writers.
exactly not. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't ask um the original writers and producers. I know we're getting a lot of the same team to come back, but that is another thing. I'm surprised that after the creative overhaul, they didn't bring on more people from the original show if that's their endpoint, like trying to make it as close to the original series as possible.
Yeah, and I think it might just go back to that whole thing about like paying people, because I mean, yeah, if you bring like the original showrunner, he's basically going to approach it as a season 4, and he's going to be looking like he'll know basically what Marvel says is and isn't canon, and he'd be able to be like, wait, no, this is a season 4, you have to pay me, you know, for like what my contract says for a fourth season at this point. I don't know. I think it's basically just to avoid any sort of litigation. It does bring me hope that they brought I think it was one of the writers for the Punisher, or was it the showrunner for the Punisher? Like that's who's the showrunner now for Born Again, I think.
Yeah, I think
Um
some notes somewhere of like who the team is. They have new directors on the show. My information might totally be outdated because I did this months ago and I was going to make a TikTok about it. But they have new directors for some of the episodes that worked on Loki season 2 as executive producers.
yes,
Um,
I remember that.
and they also worked on Moon Knight. So the directors
Mhm.
Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, they did Moon Knight and Loki season 2, are some of the people that they brought on. And then let's see. I'm pretty sure they brought back the stunt coordinator from the original show, or some people from the stunt team that did the choreography from the original like hallway type scenes, I believe.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. This is like the best news I've gotten all day
I
because
could be wrong. They're
um
gonna like fact check me, but I'm pretty sure the truth.
I mean, I've heard that I've heard that like Marvel has dropped hints that like yeah, we've done a hallway scene and it's going to be like really really good. So, I mean, you know me. I'm that prison like 11-minute prison scene, so good, so good. It's honestly for me like top tier television. It's a shame it wasn't eligible for the Emmys, which I just found out like last week that it was too long, so it wasn't eligible for the Emmys, which is a shame. But the fact that in they did like the one shot fight scene in Echo, which was really good. It was really well done, and then they almost gave us like a full on fight. Well, they did give us a hallway fight scene in She-Hulk as well, but then they also were kind of like here comes another part to it, and then it's her show, so of course She-Hulk like smashes in and like ends the fight scene. But they're using aspects of the original show when it comes to like the action sequences. So I have a pretty good feeling that they're gonna do a good job. It's and we were kind of talking about this before, like Daredevil is a huge like him being Daredevil, being the vigilante is such a huge part of the show. And some people do just watch it for the action. Like I am fully aware there are fans that watch it just for the action. So, it's a very high bar. So if they're bringing back some of the original stunt team, like that's a good sign.
I'm really excited. I mean, they gave us a little taste in Echo of what that to look like. Um, I am curious how it felt like when with Daredevil on Netflix, with each season, like the hallway scenes got longer and crazier, and now
Yeah.
we're at like an 11-minute crazy prison break sequence, and I wonder like they're obviously gonna try to um do an homage to the original show and have some sort of like no cut hallway scene, and I'm sure they're probably trying to figure out how to do it well because they want to make a big comeback like as a new show, but also maybe top something that had already been done before and was like leading into bigger and better places. So I have no clue what to expect from the new fight scene. It's gonna be like 20 minutes of no cuts every season. It's just gonna get like longer and longer.
We're gonna get to a point where like just the whole episode, an entire
All
episode,
one.
no cuts. It's all one take.
Oh god, I'm crazy. But that would probably be my favorite episode of this season.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like that. I mean, the budget just I'm just thinking like with my filmmaker cap, like the budget for that would be insane. Like the fact that they would have to stop production for so many days to rehearse that so they can get it down. Because I know for the prison fight scene, Netflix kind of resisted a little bit because they had to stop production for just one day, I think, to rehearse it. And Netflix was kind of like, we don't know about this, because they still have to pay people who are showing up for work, but nothing's getting filmed. So they're thinking like, is it? But it paid off. So
And they did that take like gosh, I wish I remembered the number, but it was an insane number of times for such a long aggressive scene. They shot that several times in a row to get that fun that we see in the show. And I can't imagine. how much time goes into it, of course, behind the scenes as well, like getting the choreography figured out and then perfected on camera, and then making sure you get the best shot on camera. It definitely takes so much work.
No, especially because like he's technically getting more makeup done too, like throughout the scene. Like whenever he switches out with a body double, like I'm just imagining like the makeup artists and the assistant like rapidly like putting more blood on his face. The part of that scene that always gets me is like in the very beginning, you can kind of tell like when he swaps out for a stunt double, but then he crawls out from like behind the hospital bed, and you're like, okay. And then not only does he have blood on his face, but they do like the perfect like blood spatter when he gets like kicked in the head. I'm like, wow, the fact that you had like one take to do that and you pulled it off.
It's so impressive. And they do the switches so seamlessly. Like, it's crazy. Now I know where all the switches are because I've watched so many times, and I'm like, where are they even putting Charlie Cox in this? Like, where are they
Yeah.
hiding him while they're switching it up lips? But it's so seamless, and you wouldn't even believe like how many people are in that scene and how they're moving so many parts at once. And it's so impressive. And every time I go back and rewatch, specifically the one from season 3, I feel like I get even more impressed and I see so many more details. And I am just, honestly, that level of production and that level of care being put into like cool cinematic fight scenes is something that I'm absolutely looking forward to in general. Hopefully for Marvel, maybe like more shows and projects will pick up like really cool. I mean, Echo did that as well. Uh, and I love that type of stuff, so I'm super excited.
And I think Echo was also them doing a test run of like, okay, can we do this? Like, is it going to be as well received? Like, I think it was kind of practice for Daredevil Born Again. Like, because at that point, they were still filming Born Again, I think, right?
Yeah.
So that could have been basically just like a trial run, a little rehearsal for them. And yeah, I think it's fairly obvious that Feige does value did enjoy the Netflix Daredevil, because the fact that because like I'm just thinking about like the other Marvel shows that like are still not considered MCU canon. Like the big one that comes to mind is Agents of Shield. Like that's still not canon. And the fact that Daredevil basically is like he's bringing back the same actor, same actors, basically the whole cast is essentially back at this point, and they are taking aspects from the show and putting it into other MCU shows. Even in She-Hulk, they had like it's like 2 seconds, but they had the theme playing in the background.
So, are you like a superhero? Like the gold devil?
I'm Daredevil.
Which was like, okay, I really hope they use the same theme for Born Again. Like, please, like if House of the Dragon can use the same Game of Thrones theme song, like Daredevil Born Again can use the same Daredevil theme song.
That's seriously like I have a wish list of extremely nitpicky things but like that would be super important to me and that I would love if they did in the show. The intro theme is absolutely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I am a diehard intro theme fan. Like, I never skip it when I'm rewatching the show. And I just think intro themes in general are so cool. And I really hope that they have some sort of intro theme, even if it's not the original. If they did like a little remix moment so that it's like Born Again, did a twist on the original theme, and then did different visuals and a little bit of a different sound. But oh my god, I would love to see an intro theme. Sorry, that like sparked something in me. I'm so passionate about it. I feel so strongly.
No, I agree. I totally agree. Because first of all, it's just such a good. It like just taking the audio. The audio is just there's something about it. It's so good. And then when you hear the heartbeats at the end, it's just the song is so good. But then when you add the visuals as well, like it just is something so unique, but also it it feeds into the tone of the show. Like it very much helps inform the tone of the show. And I mean, I hope even if it's not, I'm not expecting them to use the same exact visuals. Audio, like I'm fine with a remixed version. Like I'll probably be really pumped if it's a remixed version. Maybe as pumped if it's the original, because it's like, oh my god. Visuals, I hope they keep it like somewhat similar, even if it's just like presenting New York in like a slightly different kind of artistic way. It's it's just such a good, it's part of what makes Daredevil Daredevil. I also never skip the intro. It's like it feels wrong to do it.
It would be so cool too if they did try to go in the same direction of what the original intro was, and they had like specifically MCU New York City landmarks, like the new Statue of Liberty, but like with the red dripping effects. Like there's cool things that they could do and like landmarks for us to like peek out at the intro.
I love that idea. I love that idea. Um, Wait, so you said you had a list of things that like you need to have in the show. Tell me what else.
I have a physical list somewhere in my room that I did before this, but I have like so many notebooks with my thoughts scattered everywhere. I'm trying to think. This is the most nitpicky thing ever. But
Mm-hmm.
I personally, I can't stand, I don't know if this is controversial. I don't like the way they're formatting the TV shows to be like 16:9 movie
Mm-hmm.
size, like in a literal sense of like the frame of the show.
Yeah.
Daredevil is full screen, like the original show, take the
Mm-hmm.
whole TV, and I feel like that's so important to the show feeling like a TV show. I know this is super nitpicky, but I feel like when they're choosing to do their TV shows in a movie aspect ratio, feels like they're not committing to the TV-ness of it for me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
No, it does.
and nitpicky. But like, I think I want the TV show to feel like TV. Like, I think that's why I want an intro theme. I think it's why I want the full screen. Like, I miss things being episodic and not necessarily feeling like. I think people have complained about this a lot, that some of the Marvel shows feel like a 6 hour movie or an 8 hour movie. Like, I'm a huge fan of TV and I want it to feel TV ish. And I just love, like, more of my screen having the beautiful visuals and being able to see every little detail. But that is so nitpicky, and I think I've already seen on the cameras that they were using behind the scenes that it's not going to be full screen.
I never really thought of it that way, but it's true. It does feel sometimes like I feel like besides WandaVision, because television was such like a major like part of that show that they're not really committing to it being TV. It's more just like we're Marvel and we do superhero movies and here's like a chopped up movie for you. It's and also I'm just like not a fan of like the really short 6 episode seasons. Like give us a little more, give us some filler episodes. We love a good filler episode.
I seriously, I don't know what started this, and I feel like maybe it was Stranger Things, but somewhere along the way, all of the streaming services decided to only do really, really short seasons and to wait like 2 or 3 years in between seasons, which is
I
like,
blame House of Cards.
I don't
I,
know, something changed. I feel like the pandemic weirdly accelerated this too.
yeah.
Don't know if I'm wrong, but it feels like recently we're just getting so much less, and I miss the days of like the Vampire Diaries where it's like 20 episodes or something a season.
You know what? I think what really did it was the invention of the miniseries. Like what was it? Big Little Lies, The Night Manager, shows like that where they were supposed to be just although now the Night Manager's doing a second season and Big Little Lies did a second season also, but they were just intended to be a single season and they were like a max of like 5 or 6 episodes. And because those did so well critically, I think other shows were like other networks and streaming services were like, oh, so that's how we're gonna win all of the Emmys if we just do that. So I think honestly, I think the blame lies with the miniseries.
I'm definitely against it. I don't know. I think we're in too deep now for me to make them change their minds, though. Like, I know everyone's talking about this, like wanting more from TV shows or just longer TV shows, but like, I really, really miss, and that's what I thought for a moment that we were getting from Daredevil when Kevin Feige announced 18
18.
I was like, this, first of all, that's insane because
Yeah.
the other Marvel shows like 6 episodes. I think Moon Knight is 6 episodes, or like
Yeah.
episodes at most or something for a series. 8
Mm-hmm.
was going to be even more than the Netflix series had ever given us.
Yep.
And assuming they were like 45 minutes to an hour each, I was like, oh my god, we're going to have unlimited Daredevil content, and it's going to be so good, and it's going to feel like really episodic and TV-ish, and it's going to like, I just miss how much content we used to get and the way shows used to be. But naturally, we've reverted back potentially to the 8 or 9 episodes, which isn't bad. We're only a couple episodes
Not bad.
of what it used to be.
Yeah, that's not bad. Because I think it was like 12 on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it was 12
12.
13.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. So, I'm not gonna complain. And if, this basically like confirms for us a second season or like a second half of a season,
Yeah,
like a volume two, I'm all like, okay, cool. Like just give me more Daredevil, basically. Um, but yeah, I mean, my mind was blown also when Kevin Feige was like 18. And I think that the fact that right off the bat he was willing to give like such a large episode, like a large what do they call it? They call it an order. Um series order for Daredevil, like also gives me more confidence. Like he really loved the Netflix show, and he saw what could be done if you basically can go a little more on the mature rating and like, just go for that kind of tone. I mean, because, and we've talked about this, like this cast and that writer team, that crew, like there was something just so magical the way all of those pieces connected. And they were able to create something that was so good. And clearly it resonated with Feige because he's like, yes, I want some of that.
he loves it so much, and it does seem that they have a lot of confidence, especially in Charlie and Vincent, like the way that they've been here to have them on board from the start. And like, I don't know, there's so much public love for Daredevil, especially like in recent years and since the